herzlichen Dank fürs Hiersein und fürs Mitsingen oder einfach fürs Zuhören und für euren Besuch. Jetzt wird die Sonntagsklasse stattfinden und wir arrangieren uns kurz um.
Hare Krishna, liebe Devotees, Hare Krishna. Vielen Dank, Chaiko Prabhu, Ramdas und allen anderen Devotees, die heute hier mitgesungen haben. Jemand hier, der kein Englisch versteht? Wahrscheinlich. English better, ja? Yeah? Aber es gibt jemanden, der kein Englisch versteht. Sonst können wir gleich alles auf Englisch machen, das wäre cool. Okay, so just very briefly, my name is Lucas, I'm a temple resident here, and I just want to give you a little heads up what is expecting you here at the temple today. So right now we'll have a class given by His Grace Akhandadhi Prabhu. Then at 5 o'clock there will be a prasadam vegetarian feast prepared for all of you. At 6:15 there will be a japa workshop where you can try out mantra meditation for yourself. And then from 7 to 8 there's a temple ceremony, and from 8 to 9:30 there will be some more kirtan like we just had now. And so I would like to introduce our guest today. It's His Grace Akhandadhi Prabhu. We're very happy that he's here today with us. Thank you very much for coming. So Prabhu is originally from Ireland, grew up in Belfast, and did his studies in architecture. Is that right? Some time ago. Then he joined the Bhaktivedanta Manor in 1975 to become a Bhakti Yoga monk, and he served there for many years, also in the function as a temple president for 13 years, and after that also was engaged in many different fields. So he's contributing for the BBC, the big television station in England, in the UK. He's been involved with the BI, which is the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Education, which is a get-together of scientists, devotees, so practitioners of Bhakti Yoga who are also in the academic field. And together with them, they're discussing many of the scientific topics that are relevant for society today. And so, in this vein, also today's class will be given on the topic of consciousness, love, and free will. Very interesting and relevant topics. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Akhandadhi Prabhu. And just, if all of you can come a little closer, that would be very nice, or even much closer, as close as possible, so that there is space from behind for people who come a little later, and also that the speaker can see you. Also, just in case, wenn es jemand braucht, hier hinten würden wir eine Übersetzung von Englisch ins Deutsche anbieten.
Hare Krishna. Very pleased to see you all here today. I hope that you can all follow my English. I sometimes speak very quickly, so I apologize if it doesn't come across. But hopefully we'll have some time at the end for any questions, or you can clarify things I might have said. We're going to sing a little song called Jaya Radha Madhava, which is a very nice, it's a bhajan, it's a song which describes Krishna and his activities in the spiritual world full of love, and it's very appropriate for the topic that we're going to be discussing. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari 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 Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya So today we give this little talk titled Consciousness, Free Will and Love. And just wanted to start off with a question to you. You know, when they do the surveys and they ask people, what do they think is the most meaningful aspect of life? What gives life the most value? What is the thing that they most search for to make their life successful? And the answer is?
Love.
Love. Isn't it? Isn't it what everyone says?
Yes.
Yeah? I mean, if you ask people, what do you want? They say, oh, I want some money. But what are you really searching for? You know? What do you actually want that's going to fulfill your heart's desire, which really is going to satisfy and make your life something that really seems to mean something? It's love, isn't it? To find love, to give love, to receive love, to love and be loved. That's the thing, isn't it? That's what it's all about. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. And it's not that I'm telling you, it's because you probably already believe that. Yeah? Would I be right to thinking that this is something that you already know in your heart? It's what it's all about. Yeah? I think so. You know, people are asked time and time again what it's all about. It's just, I want to love and to be loved. That's what is actually going on inside of me, at my deepest core. It's what I'm searching for. And okay, I might distract myself with so many other activities, so many other goals, so many other pastimes and pursuits. You know? I may even form relationships which I call love. Even those can be distractions. But really, I want the real thing. Actual love. That's what I'm looking for. So, if that's the deep intuition that we all have, we recognize that, how is it that we give over our intelligence to philosophies that cannot establish anything like love? Now, what do I mean by that? We're taught through education, which is based often on misinterpretations of science, that we're just meat machines. We're just physical things. We have a physical body, we're just biological organisms. We exist from when we're conceived and are born, and we continue until death and then disappear. And that this thing we call our consciousness which tells us we exist, which is at the heart of all of our experiences, and that this thing called consciousness simply comes from activities of the brain. Isn't that what we're taught? That we can explain everything about consciousness, everything that makes you alive, we can explain by the biology of your body and by the neurology of your brain. But if that's true, how does that philosophy or that idea tell us anything about love? So if you want to believe in love, why would you even entertain an idea that completely dismantles and undermines the very basis of what love is all about? That is the schizophrenia of the human society these days. We intuitively want to believe in love, but we haven't got a philosophy that we're willing to share amongst ourselves that substantiates love. Let me explain why I'm saying that. We often tease physicalist philosophers. Physical philosophers are the ones who say there's just the physical, there's nothing else. You know, the brain produces consciousness, that's life, that's it, that's what it all is about. Then we say, well, where's free will in that? What is your explanation of free will? And why do we focus on that? Because where does love spring from? When we are talking about the actual feeling of real love, we're not just talking about attraction. We're not just talking about, oh, this person looks nice or this person is nice to me. We're talking about something that springs from a very deep place inside us. And it can't just be something that we're programmed for. If something is making us feel that way, could we call it love? Love has to come from freedom. Freedom at the very heart of our being. But the problem with the physicalist idea that consciousness comes from the brain is that where do all my thoughts come from? Oh, they're just neurons firing. And why are my neurons firing? Well, because your senses have picked up information. You've seen something, you've heard something, you've touched something. You know, that's all sending stuff into the brain, and it's then producing new thoughts, new feelings, new emotions. So everything is being programmed. Everything is being determined by something that is not you. And if all our thoughts, all our impetus for loving feelings is just some neurons firing, or they say, well, it's, the hormones, oxytocin, and that releases dopamine, which is the reward hormone, and therefore you feel great, from all these. We can explain it all in terms of hormones. So if love is just hormones coursing through your brain, does that equate to the value that you are giving love for your life? Does that really make it valuable? No, because if it's just a question of changing chemistry, that's fairly easily done. So we have a philosophy of telling us that we are this brain, but there's no room for free will, because everything in the brain is just one action after another. These neurons setting off these neurons, and setting off those neurons, and so on. It's deterministic, as they say. It's thoroughly determined. And therefore, philosophers who believe in that we're just the brain ultimately say, well, free will is an illusion. You're just kidding yourself that you've got free will. And therefore you're just kidding yourself you feel love, or that love is actually important. Because the physicalist idea just undermines everything you believe in that's important in your life. Why would you entertain such a daft philosophy? Because there is nothing to substantiate it. That's a whole other story. I've spoken a number of times on the nature of consciousness and how it cannot be explained. It is not being explained. There isn't even a theory within neuroscience that explains how it is I feel my personal existence, how it is I experience as the I am the person experiencing my life, and how it is that even the qualities of my mind and my mental impressions are can be explained. They cannot be explained by anything we know in physics or neuroscience. That's a whole subject. It's a great talk on its own. And we can explore that over prasadam if you like. But we just focus on this point about different philosophies do not help to explain love. So the physicalist idea is that if everything is determined by the brain, then there's no free will. It's an illusion, and therefore there cannot be anything like love as you want to know it, and as you sense that it is true. Now, there are some scientists who are trying to use quantum physics to say, well, not everything is determined in the brain. There's quantum effects. And quantum effects are non-deterministic, meaning we don't know why a certain outcome would come. But that doesn't help create free will either. The most famous partnership trying to do this is Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, who we've got some connection with in our Bhaktivedanta Institute work. And we do tease them on this. We had a discussion with Stuart Hameroff a couple of weeks ago, and he was presenting some of his ideas of how space-time wobbles, and that sets up a kind of possibilities in the quantum field, and how one of them manifests as neural activity. And because you cannot predict any of that, therefore it is non-deterministic. So we asked him, well, Stuart, how does that explain free will? And he says, well, my wife says the same thing. His wife's always getting on his case for saying that there's no self, there's no free will. His wife's a very intelligent professor of psychology, actually. She knows what she's talking about. So, this is crazy. We're promoting a philosophy and a message into society that tells us we have no free will, and really what that means is also no responsibility. Because if my actions are being programmed by the physical situation of my body and what my senses pick up and how my brain processes it, then and it's all deterministic, then if I have no free will, why have I got any responsibility? When the police arrest me for doing some crazy crime, do I say, wasn't me, what have I got to do with it? It was just things happened. It was my brain kind of neurons firing. What can I do about it? It's not much of a defense. So my point is that we should be very discerning when we're hearing messages portrayed telling us what we should believe about our existence, and they don't tally with what our deep intuition is telling us. We've got to think that's suspect. Now there's various even transcendental or spiritual philosophies also, and some of them don't help with love either. For instance, a lot of the work that we do in the world of consciousness, we have connections with many other organizations and institutes who know very well that consciousness is not a material thing. They understand absolutely clearly consciousness is fundamental. It's a fundamental aspect of reality. It cannot be produced by anything in physics. Rather, it's the other way. The physical world is ultimately a manifestation of consciousness. That doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that consciousness influences it. And we know that. Our will changes how things are. And that's happening on a very kind of obvious way like this, and it's happening also in a very subtle way. So a lot of people in the world of consciousness, they know we're never going to explain consciousness as a physical thing. That just doesn't work. Consciousness is so different in its function and in its properties and what it's like. There's nothing like that in physics. We can't categorize them the same. But the tendency then is to think that then, well, if there's just consciousness, then everything, you, me, we're all just conscious and we're all the one thing. And this tends to rather an impersonal kind of concept of consciousness. That actually there is just one consciousness. And that at the moment we think of ourselves as being individuals, individual selves. But that's simply an illusion. At a certain point we'll get to understand that we're all just one. I am you and you are me, and what I see in you is me, as the song goes. And it's understandable why one would take that point of view, because the idea of unity is very attractive. When we look at the troubles of this world, we see there's disharmony because we have different views, we have different motivations, I was introduced, I'm born and brought up in Belfast. Until recently, I went to school in the most bombed street in Europe. That's no longer the case, thanks to the current craziness elsewhere. But I grew up in a place where there was 2 communities fighting in the one city. Over what? Politics, economics, in the name of religion. So there was that sort of animosity and what we call in Sanskrit dvesha, hatred or envy based on duality, thinking that this other person is different from me in some way, and therefore I've got the people who are like me, they're my friends, the people who are not like me, they're my enemies. And, you know, I've got to establish what me and my friends want, because that's what ultimately will make me happy. Terrible way of thinking, of course. So many people react against that type of dvesha, that type of duality thinking, and believe that when we get to a spiritual way of thinking, it's got to overcome all these dualities of good and bad, right and wrong, rich and poor, you know, and so on. We've got to overcome all those. And they imagine that the way to do it is that we are just all one conscious being, and that there is union. So their concept of love, in that case, is that it's not a question of relationships, it's a question of union. That I become you, and that's the perfection of a loving relationship. But if we merge ourselves, does that actually represent the value of love as a giving of oneself that we value? Because if I just become you, then whatever we are doing is still for my benefit, isn't it? It's still self-centered. And whose will is it anyway? Whose will would it be then? And how is that a better state for us? It may get free from the duality, we might imagine it would, but it's not a state of love. Love requires the giving of oneself for the interests of another. The Yoga Sutras talk about this in the Sadhana, just the second chapter of the Yoga Sutra. There's a couple of a lot of really nice verses in the Yoga Sutra, but one talks about Sarasa Vahi, that our typical nature in this world is I want to draw everything into me, Vahi, you know, I'm trying to draw it towards me for my pleasure, my experience. That tends to be how we relate to the world. We see something, just draw it to us. If there's things that can be obtained, bring them to me. If there's persons I'm attracted to, bring them to me. I'm trying to bring everything for my enjoyment, my rasa, at a very deep level. But the next verse says, no. Pratiprasava. You've got to let your heart flow out. Instead of trying to draw the world into you, let your heart flow out to others. And ultimately, try and find the divine recipient of your heart. Ishvara Pranadani, as Patanjali says. Finding that ultimate giving of your very self to Ishvara, Krishna. So, love means letting the heart go free out, not trying to draw it in. It requires us to retain our selfhood. Because only as long as I am me, the real me, the real loving me, can I actually then situate myself in a loving relationship with anyone else? So trying to get over being an irresponsible, non-loving self by merging with another isn't the process. That's not going to get you love. That's not going to get you fulfillment. That's not even possible. I'm afraid that the only way is to actually discover love is to become a loving self. And it's in you. It's inherent in you, according to the philosophy that we follow. So, my point is that there's not many philosophies that actually substantiate love as you want it. But Krishna consciousness is certainly one. Because the whole thing about Krishna consciousness is that it's based on trying to help each individual find the perfection of love that they deserve. That's actually there waiting in your heart, waiting to come out. It's said, it's not something you're going to be given. It's not something new to you. It's inherent. The spirit of love is already inherent in our hearts. The only person that is stopping that bursting out is ourselves. It's the svarasavahi. It's the selfishness. I'm just trying to hold on to me and not give of myself to anyone and not give of myself to the Supreme. So we're the only ones getting in our way when it comes to actually experiencing pure love. And why Krishna consciousness, if there may be other philosophies that talk about love in this way? That it is real. It is there in your heart. You are right to believe that it's important. You are right to think that it's the all-important aspect. You're correct. So, Krishna consciousness supports your intuitions. And it does more than that. It is asking us, do you want any help in bringing out this love from your heart? Yeah, I think we all need a bit of help on this. That's the nature of this world. We've taken birth here many times. We've tried many ways to make ourselves happy. We've created many habits that trouble us. You know? We've got many patterns of behavior that don't show and express love properly, that just get us into trouble every time we try. You know, we've developed all that sort of baggage in our sojourn in this world. So how are we going to break free from it? So this is where the message of the Bhagavad Gita can help us. That instead of simply trying to serve ourselves, we think, wouldn't it be nice if I could discover a relationship that inspired me to give of myself? Now that's hard when it comes to human relationships. Sometimes it works wonderfully, and you know, we can each be inspired by others that we meet. But too often we hold back because of trust. We're not sure if we can trust every other human being. We've been let down a few times, you know. Times we've opened our hearts and given out and it may not have worked out. Not just in this life, in many other lives. That's created a little hardness in the heart. We need to soften it. So we say, well, what if there was a personality who you could trust, who actually is the embodiment of love. Now, this is something that even in religions that profess about loving God, you sometimes ask them, well, what is your concept of God? And for many these days, in other monotheistic faiths, they will say, well, when we talk about God, we're really talking about the power of love. That's the concept of God, the power of love. Is that nice? Yeah. Not good enough. No. Actually, people like to believe that God is just the power of love because they don't trust that there could be a personality of love. A personality who can perfectly love. They just want to put it in the category of some kind of lovingness. But they don't trust that God could be that perfect person. A perfect lover. So that distinguishes again Krishna consciousness from other faiths which are not willing to tell you the perfection of the love that God can give. And this is our vision of Krishna. Krishna means the all-attractive. It basically means a supreme, lovable personality. Why? Because Krishna is at the core of everything. And Krishna's idea for forming reality, the whole of existence was, let's do a bit of love. Let's make this all about love. And Krishna is not only the supreme, lovable personality, but Krishna does something just amazing. He expands himself as Radha, Srimati Radharani, who is the power of love. And Krishna then says, Krishna, the supreme being, that source from which everything else comes, this personality says, now we have Radha, I am under her control. I am now under control of love. And now let there be all the other souls, all the other atmas, of which we're just a tiny portion. Let them all be lovers also. And I will put myself under the control of their love also. That's Krishna. That there is the opportunity to bring God under the control from our love. But you can sense just how deep, how pure, how your love would need to be. But Krishna says, it doesn't matter. I'm actually attracted by any manifestation of love. Even just a little surface I like. This is Krishna, he's won over by any little effort. Patram pushpam phalam toyam, he says. Yome bhaktya prayachati. He says, if you do a little service, just imagine you wanted just to offer something to God. Now, how do you do that? Well, Krishna appears. Krishna appears on the altar. And he says, just make a little offering to me. Does it need to be big and expensive? No. Patram. A leaf. Pushpa. A flower. Phalam. Just a little fruit. Toyam. Even water. That's manageable. He says, and Krishna says, that will win me over. If it's offered bhaktya, with devotion, just put a little of your heart into it. Don't just do the ritual. Give of your heart anytime you do something for Krishna. Because that's the bit that Krishna is responding to. But he likes that we do something physical, because we're physical. We're in this physical body. We're going to do kind of we're going to eat, we're going to work, we're going to do all sorts of things during the day. So use that activity in some way to offer a little service, a little devotion directed towards Krishna. And Krishna just becomes won over by it. And the amazing thing about the what is defined as love in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a book that Srila Prabhupada translated about the life of and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. There's the statement that when we talk about love, it's the opposite of envy. Now, envy isn't just jealousy. Envy means if I see you happy, immediately that hurts my heart. That's envy, isn't it? You know, you've got something nice, and I go, and I feel I feel real pain, you know, at your happiness. That's envy. That's what's mostly what's going on in this world, you know. When we see someone else has got something, we kind of think, well, that would be nice. Oh, they seem to be better at that than me. Oh, they can do this. They can, you know. It's painful. That's envy. So, for Vaishnavas, for devotees, the opposite to love is envy. It's not hate. It's envy because of that aspect. But what is love then is when I see your pain, then what does that cause in me? That causes me hurt. If I see that you are not feeling good, immediately that is in my heart too. It's the ultimate empathy. If I see you're happy, then immediately that's my happiness. And I cannot conceive of my happiness or pleasure separate from yours. There's just no way. There's no way I could be happy if you're not. That's love. And there's even no way that I can be unhappy if you're happy. That's the state of love. That's a union, but it's not a merging of selves. Do you see? You see the difference? It's not a merging that I become you. It's just that our interests, our hearts, our moods, our consciousness is so closely related that I feel what you feel. But I feel it as myself. And therefore, I'm still myself and I still can give myself. So if I sense it in you, I can extend myself. I want to extend my heart to yours. So that's the type of relationship that we are trying to cultivate with Krishna. Little steps of bhakti. But we might think, don't really know Krishna very well. Don't know much about him. How will my heart feel anything in relationship to Krishna? And that's what the Maha Mantra is all about. The Maha Mantra is your opportunity to have a date with Krishna. That's really what it is. You know? Have a date with Krishna. Hang out with Krishna. Share your consciousness with him. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You're with Krishna. It's as simple as that. And anyone who has tried the Maha Mantra, just with a little bit of sincerity, just giving themselves over to hearing that sound vibration, begins to realize this is not something ordinary. This is me and Krishna. And something has changed in me because of meeting and interacting with Krishna. I can cast my mind back 50 years ago.
when I first came upon the Maha Mantra. Actually, first time I came upon it was when it was in the charts in 1969, and I was saying, oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know, really liked it. My friends got upset. But I wasn't chanting seriously then. It was only after I met a couple of guys at a fruit farm in England, and they were chanting, and they'd learned it somewhere. Like one of them had been in the temple. They didn't know very much, and they weren't very good at teaching me how to chant. But I kind of thought, this is cool. I'll have a go at this. And I wasn't a serious meditator. I wasn't very disciplined. But once in a while, I would get into trouble. You know, relationships, issues, you know, this thing or that, you know. As everyone does when you're a teenager, you get into trouble. And you kind of think, oh, the world's crushing around me. Oh, this is misery. Oh, it couldn't be worse. Oh, this is terrible. Like that. So I think, well, what do I do? I'll sit down with Krishna. And I would just chant on the beats 108 times. It used to take me 20 minutes to go around, nice and slow. Often think I chanted really well there. Really focused, just trying Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. And while I was chanting, I'd be trying to, my mind would want to think about the problems I had. Isn't it? That's what happens when you're chanting. The mind wants to, it's a great opportunity to think about things. No. The mind wants to think about the problems, but I would tell myself, I don't have to think about the problems. They'll still be there waiting for me after I finish chanting. They're not going away. I don't have to worry that I'll forget them. You won't forget the problems, You don't have to keep reminding yourself of them as if you're going to forget. Leave them, let them be. They'll wait for you after you've chanted. So I would just try and keep focused. And then at the end of chanting, I'd be thinking, okay, so what about my problems? And I'd be thinking, wait a minute, why are you feeling this pleasure inside? Why are you feeling this happiness? You're meant to be miserable. You're meant to be worried about all this thing that's going on. Why are you feeling a kind of bliss? And I'd be arguing with myself like this, telling myself, there's something wrong here. And then you start to realize that actually Krishna's kind of telling you that things aren't quite the way you thought they were. And there's other ways of seeing the issues. And that maybe something slightly different has changed. And you just think, yeah, Krishna, you kind of helped me through this. And whatever I thought was my problems, that was just because I was there on my own and had no one to help me. No one to befriend me. No one to guide me. No one to show me this love that you've just shown me. So we would just encourage everyone, whatever the issues you may ever face, Krishna, that's the time to take help from Krishna. They say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. Because when you've got a problem, many friends will just make themselves scarce. They're not taking your calls anymore. They don't want to hear about your problems again. But Krishna will. And perhaps it's, in these early stages of our relationship with Krishna, we're more likely to turn to Krishna when we're in need. But that's fine, because that will show you how Krishna will help. That will give you trust, little by little, in a relationship. Krishna is real. Krishna wants to love you. Krishna wants to help you. And he's there for you. And as you go through, it will not just be, I'm trying to take from Krishna.
but you naturally want to respond. That's the nature of the soul. You know, we know we don't want to be just takers in life. We want to be givers. We want to contribute. The other aspect that's so important for people finding fulfillment is to be useful, to be of service, to contribute to others and help them. That's a crucial part of what it means to feel that my life was successful. Tomorrow in Britain, the funeral of the Queen, and she's been glorified for something when you may know the circumstance. She was the daughter of the second son of the previous king. And so when George V died, his eldest son, Edward, was to take the throne. And the Queen's father was George II. It was George the second son. But Edward gave up the throne for love. So then the throne passed to George. So suddenly Elizabeth, who was only 21 at the time, found herself to be the next in line after her father, who was still, at that point, had just been crowned. So when she was 21, she made a statement that for however long or short my life will be, I give it to you in service. And what's being appreciated by many people in Britain is she did. She took the throne 4 years later and then served for 70 years, unwavering. And at a time when people are thinking about the politicians, think these guys can't keep their word for 10 minutes. In fact, the word was lies from the start, and they knew it. But at least one person showed an example of what it is to serve. And why is that appreciated? If we're just physical objects, that have no purpose in existence, as the physicalist, materialists tell us we are, then why aren't we glorifying all those who cheat and lie and just try to connive their way to success? Why do we praise these qualities which are totally against the materialistic, personalist kind of attitude of selfishness in this world? Why? Because we recognize that these have real quality. These are spiritual qualities which are at the core of our very being. Therefore, when we see service, when we see someone willing to give of themselves for the good of others, we think, wow, such a person is kind, such a person is compassionate, such a person is dedicated. It's inspiring. And it's because giving of ourselves in service to God is the most natural thing for the soul. Therefore, we appreciate even a hint of it when we see it elsewhere. So, this is the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. It puts the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna, at the heart of everything. He is the supreme beloved, supreme person who we can love, because he is the supreme lover of all beings. Krishna says, no one is more favored by me, no one is spited by me. I love everyone equally. And that includes us. You are equally loved as every other and any other soul is. So time for us to give back to Krishna. It's our natural tendency to want to serve, to want to be of help to Krishna, to want to find that love and satisfaction and fulfillment that is the craving of our heart. And it's all there for us. It can be found in the chanting of the Maha Mantra, And knowledge of this process is found in the various books, the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as Krishna says, pratyaksha avagamam dharmyam. This isn't anything to do with belief. We're not telling you what to believe in. We're not telling you to have faith. Krishna says pratyaksha avagamam. That means that this is direct perception. This is something you will discover for yourself. You don't have to take anyone else's words. It's agama. It's evidence. It's proof for yourself. You try the process, you will find the evidence. Susukham kartam avyayam. And it's easy to do. And it is the most joyful process that you will undertake in your life, because it is uncovering the natural joy of each of you as the soul. So that's our recommendation for this afternoon. Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. We've probably got a couple of minutes for things. If there's any questions. Any thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your wonderful lectures, and I feel recommend. And okay, first no, it doesn't work. Well, no. Thank you very much, and I also would say that compassion, you mentioned it many times, is an essential part of love. You know, without compassion, then yeah. For example, someone is coming and have got this problem, and you try to understand him without any judgment, something like this. This is a kind of compassion, you know. And also take time to listen with your heart, not with your head.
Yes, I mean, compassion is exactly as we were saying earlier, that when you sense another's pain, and therefore you want to help, you want to extend yourself. And actually seeing how compassion is growing in your heart is a very good way of understanding how you're moving closer to Krishna. No one is more compassionate than Krishna. So as we move closer to Krishna, we actually start to manifest the qualities of Krishna, just in a small way. He manifests them in total in a huge way. But we start to manifest each of those qualities like compassion. It's very important.
Thank you very much for your question. My question is, where does, in the Krishna philosophy, where does the neurons and the electrons and all that stuff, where is the place for that in our holistic philosophy?
Well, you're asking a major question there, but I can give a simple thing. What's very clear now within neurology is that you cannot put thoughts and mental qualities, we cannot account for them within the brain. That seems to be processed in some other way that's non-neural. Similarly, consciousness again is separate even from that, from the aspect of the mind. Consciousness is that which observes the content of mind. Okay, so what's that leave left for the brain? Well, the brain is basically the hub of the nervous system, which is linking the perception senses. So if I may see something, and I want to pick it up, information has to go to my brain, and to be able to tell the motor stuff here, that's where I'll get it. So there's a lot of connections between the perception senses and then the action activities of the body. And basically, that's what the brain's doing. There's a lot to that, and there's interaction with activities, but the brain does not produce emotions, you can correlate your emotions or your thoughts and your perceptions with certain activities in the brain, but the qualities of emotions and perceptions are different. And that's why they're given a special name, qualia. Qualia are the qualities. Let's do something very simple. We could try this before with some of you. Just do this. You know this trick where you look, and you see you've got a little floating finger in front of your eye. You can see, if you look at the tips, look beyond them, you can see a little floating sausage. Yeah? Have you ever done that before? I thought every kid did that at school, yeah? Right? Now, think about this. I am seeing something, a floating finger. But where does it exist? Where is that picture of a floating finger? It's not out here. No, because it's not there. It's this image goes into this eye, this image goes into this eye. There's no floating finger in the eye. So, therefore, where are we left? The brain? Well, where is there a picture in the brain? Tell me where there's a picture. Seriously. There isn't. Because a picture has qualities of shape, of colour, of movement. But there's nothing like that in the brain. But there's nowhere else for that picture to be. It's not outside, it's not in the eye, it's not in the brain. Where is it? The mind. It's qualities. You are experiencing something which is a picture held in the mind. But the mind, therefore, has qualities that cannot be explained in terms of neurons, electrons, ions jumping from one cell to another. That's qualia. So you have just understood that what you're experiencing as qualia, as the imagery of this world, is not something outside, is not something in your eye, is not something in your brain, but it is an image generated in your mind, which is not neural. It is not physical. That is the hard problem of consciousness, as described by the philosophers. That is the problem that the neurologists and the neuroscientists hide from you, because they're still trying to tell you we can explain consciousness by brain. No, you can't. You cannot explain how I am conscious of the things that I am conscious. You cannot explain. Therefore, you have to accept that consciousness and the mind are not physical objects. They are of a different category of reality. And that opens up the picture of what reality is all about. So, when we talk about Krishna consciousness, we are not asking you to believe in something that is against science. We're telling you to actually understand what the science is. And when you understand what the science is, you go, yep, okay, Krishna, you got it right. Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
One question. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. It's really, really inspiring. I just wanted to ask you if you would be kind to maybe, because of my short attention span, you said so many wonderful things, but if you can just summarize maybe in a simple answer, what is our biggest obstacle in achieving this true love, as you say?
What's our biggest obstacle in letting our heart flow freely to Krishna? It's the baggage that we carry with us from all our hurts in this life and in previous lives. We've been hurt when we opened ourselves to others, when we've tried to find love in the wrong way, in a selfish way. Something has gone wrong and we've been let down, or we've let down others, or whatever, and we're just carrying this baggage which has hardened the heart. And the heart it becomes hridaya grantham, it just becomes knotted with all these problems and issues and doubts and misgivings that we've had over so many lifetimes. So, Vidyante, we were hearing yesterday in the Bhagavatam, it says you need to start cutting away at the